Hey everybody, today we're going to do the 2025 governor's prediction for the month of May. There's only two states on the ballot this year. It's New Jersey and Virginia. Primaries are already coming up next month, and there's a lot more questions about New Jersey, so we're going to start there. So because there's only two races this time, let's jump over to Wikipedia. Now this is an open seat. It's to replace Governor Phil Murphy, who's term limited. The state last elected a Republican governor in 2013 with Chris Christie, and with a closer than expected election for president in 24, Republicans might be hoping to put this state in play, but overall few people would deny this is considered a blue state, and with Trump in the White House, Democrats are looking for an easy hold here. Now the primary is on June 10th, and as we scroll down here and get into the candidates, it's a very crowded field here for the Dems. I would have thought by now one or two of these candidates might have dropped out after they failed to get any momentum. However, it looks like there's enough momentum across the board, and as of now they're all technically still in the running. Now there's six main candidates here, and you could break half of them down into the more progressive side. It's going to be Ras Baraka, Stephen Fulop, and Sean Spiller. The more moderate or establishment side is going to be Josh Gottheimer, Mikey Sherrill, and Stephen Sweeney. Again, it's a crowded field, but I think one of them right now has a bit of an edge. That's going to be Mikey Sherrill. She's currently in the U.S. House. She's got a military background. She seems like the kind of candidate the establishment would push for. But as we go down here, we can glance at these endorsements. And unlike almost every other race we see, pretty much every candidate has a bunch of endorsements lined up. Now, Gottheimer has lost a few of them to Mikey Sherrill, and Sherrill probably does have the most, while Sean Spiller has the least. There's going to be different factions, but with this many candidates, we've got to take a look at the polling. Now, most of these are internal polls from the campaigns themselves. Mikey Sherrill, Ras Baraka, they both put out a bunch of their own. The one here from early April from Rutgers Eagleton, that's supposed to take a neutral look at it. So when we look at this polling, one thing jumps out. That is going to be Mikey Sherrill. She is in the lead in every single one of these polls, including the internals from the other candidates. However, the other thing that jumps out is she's maybe topping out at 25%, and that's from her old campaign. She might only be in the high or even mid-teens. Everybody else has at least 7 to 8%. Half of them are also in double digits, but on the right, undecideds dominate. It's not as high as it was last year, but we're still looking at anywhere from a fifth to a third of the electorate doesn't know who they're going to support. So it's really wide open, but I think Cheryl does have a bit of an edge. It's not overwhelming. She's not destined to get that nomination. So we've got to see what happens. Now, there's also campaign finance here. It's really only updated through the end of last year. There's also debates here. There's a couple of them coming up this month. So whichever Democrat emerges, they're going to have an edge because it's a blue state. But on the Republican side, there's still a couple of question marks. Not as many as the Dems, but the front runner is going to be Jack Ciattarelli. He almost took down Governor Phil Murphy in 2021. So he's running again. This is his third crack at it. Now, there's a couple other candidates in the race, including Bill Spadea. He's running to Ciattarelli's right. So there are also some interesting dynamics on the GOP side. Is Ciattarelli considered too moderate to get the Trump base to turn out? Or is he the only chance Republicans have in this moderately blue state? For whatever reason here on the endorsements, under decline to endorse, we've got Chris Christie. That's not too unexpected. But we've also got Nancy Mace, who's not even from this state. Apparently, she's not going to weigh in on this GOP nomination. Now, down here in the polling, it's a little bit more clear-cut than the Dems. Ciattarelli has a lead, but again, some of these are from his own campaign. In the Rutgers poll, he's at 42%, still 34 undecided in that one. After that, there's again going to be some campaign finance and some debates. So when it comes to filling out the rating for this race in the general election, two big things come to mind. First, we really got to get past the primaries and into general election season before we have a realistic idea of how the race is going to shape up. And second of all, is this race going to end up being anticlimactic? Because Trump is in the White House, Dems are going to be energized, and the state already does lean blue, so they're going to win by 8 to 10, maybe even 15 points. Well, usually on my predictions, the further out from an election, the more cautious I am. It's always easy to take a snapshot in time and translate that ahead 6 months into a different race. But the entirety of the race is not always going to come down to Donald Trump. For example, here's an editorial about cost of living adjustments. This is an example of a more local issue that could have impacts on the governor's race. There's plenty of other things as well, in addition to the major national themes we hear about all the time, like immigration, tariffs, crime, etc. So if we come back here for the rating, there's no question that even in a neutral environment, I think Dems would have an edge. But there are still a lot of question marks. We've got a lot of time to go. Everything could look different in 4 or 5 months. Republicans did have a decent night here in the presidential election. They've made gains in the voter registration data, but there's no way I would ever think the Republicans are going to be favored at this point. Dems have the edge. The only question is, how much of an edge is it? Well, given their primary field is just so crowded at the current moment, it's not going to be the case where somebody rises up and clears the field and there's no infighting. So it's borderline lean likely. I could see putting it at likely, but again, it's also going to be an open seat. There's a chance that the electorate is going to be in the mood for a change politically in that state. The polling did clearly underestimate Ciattarelli 4 years ago. Doesn't mean it's going to happen again, but at this point, I'm going to keep my rating the same at lean Democrat. Next, we're going to jump over to Virginia. Now, this is another open seat. Governor Glenn Youngkin is going to be term limited after just one 4-year term. And there's not really many question marks about this race. We've already got our nominees. It's Lieutenant Governor Winsome Sears for the Republicans, and it's Abigail Spanberger, former U.S. Rep for the Democrats. So if we scroll down here and get into the candidates, there wasn't really a competitive primary on either side. We've got Governor Glenn Youngkin, unsurprisingly, has endorsed his lieutenant governor. Youngkin has actually remained relatively popular during his term. He's not working with a friendly state legislature, but in this state that has drifted a lot toward the left over the past couple of decades, Youngkin has found a way to remain popular. Now, maybe if Youngkin could run for re-election, he could actually have an edge. But the problem here for the Republicans is it's going to be Trump in the White House. If it was Harris in there, I think the Republicans could easily be favored. But over the past handful of decades, with one exception, they elect a governor that's the opposite party of the White House. So that's why Dems look like they're going to be favored. Now, on that side, Abigail Spanberger, she seems like an ideal candidate for the Dems. She's got congressional experience, she seems like she's going to have some suburban appeal, and she had a lot of time to plan for this run, and she pretty much ran unopposed. You could also see her endorsements here that she's got lined up. Now, after that, there was also talk about former Republican Denver Riggleman maybe also trying to make a run. Anything could technically change. They could always mount a write-in campaign, but for right now, I'm going to assume it's just Sears against Spanberger. Now, if we glance down here at the polling, it's pretty favorable here for Spanberger. Now, she's not hitting 50%, but these polls are all at least from a couple of months ago. She could hold that lead all the way through November, but 4 years ago when Youngkin won, it looked like he was easily trailing up until the home stretch. So we're just going to have to take it slow and see what happens. Now, in addition to this governor's race, they're also having an election for lieutenant governor and attorney general. Now, we're not going to take a look at those races in this video, but here's a story that could potentially have some impact for governor. We've got Governor Glenn Youngkin asking the Republican nominee for lieutenant governor, John Reed, to exit the race. He's facing scrutiny on a potential sexual-related scandal. Maybe you care a ton, maybe you don't care at all, but that's something to also keep in mind for the upcoming election. So as we come back to the map, we've got to give this a rating. Now, a few months ago in my initial rating, I started it off as Tilt Democrat. Even though it was early, I still thought it would have been reasonable if I put it at leans. At this point, it's still kind of early, and again, a ton of stuff could change. However, I do think that with all things considered, Spanberger is going to be favored. In the end, it's possible she could win by 10 or 12 points, and it's also possible that Sears could end up pulling it out in the end. That seems much less likely at this point, but right now, I'm going to put this rating at leans Democrat. We'll see where we're at in the summer. She could gain momentum, it could go up, or something else could happen and things change. Politics is fleeting. Anybody can make a prediction about how it looks today. If that was the case, I think Spanberger wins by 7 or 8 points. But it's not about today. It's not about in 2 or 3 weeks. It's about the November election. It's much harder to have confidence in that type of a rating. But for now, this is what I've got. I've got Democrats with 1 flip and 1 hold. They're a lot closer to going up to likely blue than they are to being truly competitive for the GOP. I think the economic sentiment in Trump and the White House is going to be the biggest barrier for these races going red. But you never know. We've been surprised in New Jersey in the past, and Youngkin showed that Republicans can still technically win a statewide race. But for right now, these are the ratings that I think are most reasonable for the 2025 governor's races. So let me know in the comments, how are your ratings for the month of May? Do you just think that Trump is unpopular, so Democrats are going to win by 10 or more points and there's nothing else to think about? Or do you think there's a lot of time for different things to develop? Local issues might come into play, and maybe one or both of these states is truly competitive. Let me know down below. On your way out, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Join if you'd like to support the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.